DGens. This is Angelo with aags.online. Also, Advantage Analytics if you're looking at this on YouTube. Just wanted to go over a few things before we get into the playoffs. It is coming up quickly. We've got 2 days now left to prepare or get our bets in if we're trying to do that. Before we even touch on the playoffs, though, did want to look at some regular season numbers and really more specifically key numbers. One of which is the number 3. So if you're not familiar with key numbers, when you're placing bets, key numbers are the numbers that tend to separate games most. So meaning at the end of the game, the teams were separated by 7 points, 3 points, 10 points, winner from loser, things like that. So as far as the key numbers for 2020, the biggest key number was a 3. Uh, the amount of games, as far as how many games were separated by 3 points, was actually 14% of the games. So we have 14% of the games separated by exactly 3 points. When you're making a bet and you're trying to get either a +3 or a +3.5, and if you are getting the favorite, you want to get the -3 or the -2.5. If you can, you get that half the kicker. And a lot of times you hear sharps talking about paying up for the kicker, meaning that if the line is at 3, they'll pay that extra vig to get it to the +3.5, or vice versa if they're taking the favorite. Um, just as importantly, though, is when you take a number like a 3 or 3.5, you're not just getting 3, you're not just getting the 14% of the time that a line will land on exactly 3 or that a game will end in exactly 3 point difference. You're getting the 1 and the 2 as well. So you're getting the 4% of the time that it landed on 1 and the 4% of the time it landed on 2. So you're getting 18% of the time value, essentially. And that's where you start doing the math for expected values and things like that. Um, just off screen, if you're looking at your screen right now, I do have the 20-point value as well. So teams that were, or games that were separated by more than 20 points was also 14%. So between the 14 and the 3, we have the 28, and then if you add the 1 and the 2, of course, we have that'll get us up to 36. 36% of the time, games were either separated by 3 points or less, or 20 points or more. So most games in the NFL are going to be really, really close, or just blowouts. If you look just below this, again, if you're looking at your screen, and if you're not, I'd say when you have a second, if you're not driving, look at the screen I have here in front of you, because it's really going to help you, not just this year if I was getting to the playoffs, but next year, so that you know what you're looking for in lines and things like that. In 2019, 46% of all games were separated by 7 points or less. 29% of games were separated by 15 points or more. So only 25% of the time do we have a game landing kind of between that 8 and 13 range, that mid-range that a lot of us don't like to take. So if you are looking at lines and you're saying, well, like a -10, that's kind of a lot, um, odds are it's probably going to be a blowout, and that's why they're putting it at 10, especially if it's like a -14, same thing. The, Vegas or whoever you're betting against is thinking that it's going to be a blowout, and 14 is just right on the edge, and it's just enough to maybe kind of scare you off of that number. But like I said, just keep in mind, close to 30% of games are going to be more than 14-point differentials. That was 2019. In 2020, we still had 46% of the games separated by 7 points or less. 30% of the games were then separated by 15 points or more, and 24% of the games were separated between 8 to 13 points. So everything kind of remained the same. And as I've done this work throughout the years, it always kind of lands the same. And if you're going, on a week by week basis, if there's no bye weeks, there's 16 games, and off the percentages, and this is will stand to be true. And if you want to go back and dig through the history, feel free. But I'm giving you the numbers here that I've tracked over the last 4 or 5 years. You have about 7 to 9 games every week that land in that 7 point or less differential. Then you have about 4 to 6 games every week that are going to be more than 14 points or 2 touchdowns or more differential. And you only have about 2 to 4 a week that land in between there. The reason that's important is if you look at the lines, especially on a Thursday night or Wednesday night, I should say, before the week even starts NFL wise, and you see that a lot of lines, or all of the lines, are 7 points or less, odds are there's some pretty good value out there. Because statistically, we're looking at least 6 games a week that are going to be separated by more than that. And if you see a lot of games that are right in the middle, just kind of in that 8 to 13 range, somewhere in there, and you'll see them put, post tens and seven and a halves and things like that. Again, same thing. There's probably some value in there if you know where to look, because just statistically, you're gonna have blowout games every week, and you're gonna have blowouts more than you're gonna have these, oh, well, I push on a 10 or I push on a 13. You're gonna have a lot of blowouts. So just keep these numbers in mind. Feel free to, crop this, pause it, look at it, write it down, write your own Excel spreadsheet. Keep numbers if you like. This is really helpful moving forward. And let's go ahead and move into the playoffs. So if we look at historical data from the wild card round, a lot of times people overinflate home field advantage, and especially this year where there's not really a lot of crowd advantage, it wasn't as important as we'd like to make it most years. So for the last 4 years, we had roughly about 75% of the teams that were home teams win in the wild card round. Um, and honestly, it goes back and forth. So some years it's 100%, some years it's 50%, and in the 50% year, again, was it really a home and field advantage, or was it just a better team? Eh, I'll leave that up to you. But the more important and more concrete number here is the number of one-score games. So over the last 3 years, 2019, 18, and 17, each year we had 3 of the 4 games separated by less than a touchdown. And in 2019, the only game that was separated by more than a touchdown was separated by 8 points. So depending on how you classify touchdown, you could have thrown that one in there as well. Uh, but the point of the matter is 75% of the games here are going to be nail biters. They're going to be one touchdown games. And that's important because as we look at the lines this week going into Wild Card Weekend, we have the Saints -10, the Buccaneers -8, and 25% of the teams, another 6 games this year, 25% of the games are going to be separated by more than a touchdown, meaning that falls exactly on 1.5. So here we have 2. So if you take one or the other, fine. I personally would refrain from taking both, only because that second game is a coin flip. Um, Speaking of which, I really want to touch on the Washington and Buccaneers game, as well as some of the handicapping for that game. So I personally create a report card every week of the NFL season, uh, and it really grades out the quarterback and the coach for the team. And honestly, it's going to be more of a coaching grade than a quarterback grade. The grade that we have here entails a few things. So it has the one score game percentage. So how many times did a team win one score games? EDSR, which is early down success rate. Turnover rates. Are you a plus or minus turnover team? And QBR, which of course takes into account the quarterback. So when we're looking at that, I put in the grade. The grade is then used as either a point 0.6 or a point 0.7, and that gives us a predicted score. If you look at this, I did not make this formula to copy Vegas or to try and copy the lines. I just made my own grades and correlated it and found that there was a correlation to the Vegas lines. So if we're looking at this here, the Buccaneers, I have the low end prediction at 26 points for the team, high end prediction at 30, and Washington at 17 or 20. So either way, that's you know roughly 8 to 10 points. Uh, with 8 to 10, they're going kind of in the middle, and they're going to take that 8 point spread, and that's where they're coming up with these numbers. That being said, though, traditional handicapping really struggles in the playoffs, and mainly that comes true because the coaches are going to show us things they haven't been showing us all year. So the numbers that I have and the numbers any handicapper has is all predicated on what we've seen, what the coaches have been doing, what the players have been doing, what calls they've been coming up with. Some things I like to take into account are personnel groups. What schemes are they going with? Are they throwing a lot of 12, 13? Are they running a lot of 21 personnel? Things like that. And after about the fourth or fifth week of the regular season, those things really round into shape. We know what we're looking at. We, for the most part, know what game plan different teams are using, and kind of where their bread and butter is at, where they think they can separate themselves from the pack in the playoffs, especially with teams that have known that they're going to be in the playoffs, like the Packers, like the Chiefs, like the Bills. those teams have been, quote unquote, hiding plays. They've been hiding schemes, things like that since, week 12, week 13, especially with teams that are getting the bye week, like the Chiefs this week. They're going to come out with plays that we just have not seen. They're going to come out with schemes that neither us nor their opponent has seen, giving them a big advantage. But like I said, that's why handicapping really struggles throughout the playoffs. Is you're going to be guessing what a coach is going to do, what a team is going to do, what a quarterback is going to be doing. Are they going to rely on the run? Are they going to rely on the pass? What's the defense doing? Things like that that we can't possibly know because we haven't seen it. Um, but that goes again back to the coaching report and the report card here. The better coaches do that. The worst coaches, not so much. But secondly, the teams that have time to prepare, teams that know that they're going to be in the playoffs, tend to do that a lot more, which is why they tend to be more successful. Teams like the Saints. That being said, though, again, going back to the Buccaneers and Washington, there are some intangibles we can look at. So, as far as the Buccaneers are concerned, I've heard a lot of people in a lot of different circles talking about Tom Brady's sleep habits. His bedtime is 8:30. He's really struggled in all the primetime games. He's had a hard time, being awake for these games. His age, things like that. Not to say that those aren't good to know, but if we know them, and if every podcaster, YouTuber out there knows it, I guarantee you the coaches know it. I guarantee you Vegas knows it. And I've actually heard a few sharps like Warren Sharp and a couple other gamblers talking about Bruce Arians and that he has specifically structured this week's practice to take place later in the day. That way he can kind of compensate and give Brady time to adjust to the later start time. They are aware of the situation. We're not cracking any, treasure chests here, and we're not the only ones to know this. They are adjusting. So I would not put all the faith in the world that Brady's going to be sleepy for this game, that he's ready to go to bed. Uh, what I do give a lot more credence to is their record versus good pass rushing teams. So the Buccaneers have 5 losses this year. Uh, of their 5 losses, 3 of those losses came to team against teams, sorry, that were rushing the passer extremely well and putting in a lot of heavy blitz packages. Two of those games were the Saints. So the Saints, on each time they played the Buccaneers, sacked Brady 3 times and they intercepted Brady 2 times. The other team that they lost to with a heavy usage for the blitz was the Chiefs. The only team that they beat that had a heavy pass rush was the Falcons, and they beat them twice. The Falcons, again, if you're watching this, you're probably aware of their struggles this year. Uh, Not to say that they're not a decent team. I'm sure they could turn the corner. They'll be okay in the offseason and hopefully going into next year. But I'm not putting a lot of credence in a team that could beat the Falcons twice. It's not very impressive as far as I'm concerned as we get into the playoffs. Washington, on the flip side, of course, you've also probably heard, has a great defensive line. They love rushing. They're going to bring Chase Young. They're going to get different formations. They're going to rely on that pass rush. They're going to be in Brady's face. Not just Brady, but most quarterbacks struggle with a lot of pressure, a lot of hurry ups, and this is going to be a rough game for him. They're going to try to make their adjustments. I'm sure they're going to try and keep him in a clean pocket, but that's a lot easier said than done. And I don't know how well he'll be able to escape and elude that pressure, and how much is not gonna, how much is gonna affect him, and how much he's gonna be able to throw the ball accurately and in sync with his receivers. That being said, let's move over to the Washington offense. If you're looking through the stats, even the stats that I have here in front of you, it's all very skewed to the last couple of weeks when Washington really hasn't had their starters out there. Washington had to play a few weeks with Dwayne Haskins, and the Dwayne Haskins even started the year. So any stats you're looking at on Washington, whether it's recent or whether it's season long, is skewed by the fact that they had Dwayne Haskins and they even had uh, Kyle Allen in there for a little bit. So it's very tough to just look at it and say, oh well, their stats say that they're not going to win, or maybe they are going to win. Either way, I just don't take those stats very seriously, mainly because of the uh, interchangeability of players there. That being said, Alex Smith was able to make it back for the regular season ender, and he played just fine. It wasn't great by any means, but they got the win. Maybe that's because the Eagles let him, but either way, he made it back, and he's going to be starting this game, which is going to help that Washington offense, and it's going to help them move the ball faster. They should be able to take a lot of shorter checkdowns, a lot of smarter play calling, mainly because it's going to suit Alex Smith and his quick release. But aside from Alex Smith, we have Antonio Gibson. So he did play last week, and he played the week before that, but he was out for a while with an injury himself, a toe injury, I believe. So again, a lot of the numbers you're looking at are skewed to him either not playing at all or playing a half a game. Not the season finale, but the game before he only got 10 carries, and it's because he was coming off the injury. If you're looking at season-long stats, keep in mind he wasn't the starter from day one. They've been kind of going back and forth with him and J.D. McKissick, and it's really just his last couple of games here that he hit his stride before he got injured. Now they're just kind of working him back in. So I expect to see a lot of things that we have not seen previously from Ron Rivera and Washington. Uh, Also, Ron Rivera, I'm sure you've heard, he finished his cancer treatment, so he's finally got 100% of his time to dedicate to football and to play calling and to helping his team as much as he can. I wouldn't say Washington is any sort of favorite to go to the Super Bowl, but I do think they could win this game straight up. And so I have put some money on the money line, and if you want to follow me on that one, I don't blame you. I really think they have a chance here. But if you aren't as confident in that, the +8 or +8.5, I love it. The +8 I think is fine. I mean, if you can wait for the hook, great. If not, +8 is fine. Like we said, key numbers earlier. Um, 7, I don't think so much. Is yes, it is still a key number, but the difference between 8 and 8.5, not great. But again, just knowing that in this first round of the playoffs, most games are separated by less than a touchdown, I have more confidence that the Saints are going to blow out the Bears than I do saying the Buccaneers are going to blow out Washington. In this game, if they're giving me 8 points with Washington, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take the 8. I'm going to take the fact that I think Alex Smith and Ron Rivera are going to work together to have a faster, more up-tempo offense. They're going to pull out all the stops. They're going to get some surprises in there. They're going to give Tom Brady some looks that, yes, he's probably seen before. He's been around the NFL for 300 years at this point, but that he's probably still going to struggle with, just off of pure athleticism. Uh, Mike Evans might be missing this game. I actually think he's going to be out this game, and if he does end up playing this game, he's going to probably be hampered by a hamstring injury. So just keep that in mind as well. Not to say that the Buccaneers couldn't win, but if they do win, I think it's going to be a lot closer than what Vegas is telling us right now. I'm really expecting more of a 24-21 game, either way. So one more piece of just stats here as I go out the door. The standard deviation for an NFL game is 14 points. So it's exactly one touchdown per team, and that standard deviation means exactly that. That team could either score, excuse me, one more touchdown that we're thinking, or they're going to not score. They're going to score one less touchdown than we're thinking and anticipating. So if you're looking at a predicted score, again, let's take for example the Buccaneers this week. I have the high end predicted at 30. I don't think that's going to happen. So let's go with the low prediction, which was 26. So if we say that they can have a deviation of one touchdown, they may score as few as 19 points or as much as 33. I'd be very surprised if they scored more than that. Um, Realistically, and just knowing some key numbers, I'm thinking they're probably going to score about 21. So between 21 and 26, somewhere in there, is really where I feel like the Buccaneers are going to end. Washington, 17 to 20. Um, let's say that there is 17, which is their lower predicted score. With their deviation, that could kick them up to 24. So, like I said, one way or the other, regardless of which team wins, I think this is going to be a 3 point game. And I really think Washington has a chance with those surprise plays, with those unexpected things coming up, has the chance to get that extra touchdown in there, push them over the edge, and make it to the next round of the playoffs, and really upset Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. So, I hope this was helpful. I will have some more videos coming out as we get into the playoffs. The next video that I'm planning on right now is speaking of bye weeks. I know we all know that Andy Reid has a great track record coming off the bye week, but let's take a look at what the Packers and what Aaron Rodgers look like after a bye week. That way we can prepare for the second round of the playoffs and kind of take a forecast of what's coming up. But again, I hope this was helpful. Everybody have a great week. Stay safe out there. Have a great first weekend of the playoffs. Good luck. Hopefully everybody comes out a winner. You guys have a great day.